Hello and welcome back. This channel is dedicated to helping people to heal from narcissistic abuse. And today's video is focusing on how covert narcissistic abuse creates long-lasting emotional flashbacks. Now, we're going to talk about how they do this. We're going to talk about what exactly are emotional flashbacks. And most importantly, we're going to start learning how to work through them. Because emotional flashbacks can keep the suffering alive. They can keep you feeling as if you are suffering from narcissistic abuse even years after the narcissist is gone from your life. So we definitely want to learn how to work through them. So make sure you watch to the end because I'm going to give you some tips that help. For those that don't know me, my name is Michele. I'm a survivor myself of narcissistic abuse. I'm a trauma-informed coach and a somatic experiencing practitioner. I'm the founder of the School of Transformation, where survivors of narcissistic abuse from all over the world meet together weekly on Zoom, and we do the inner work to heal together. So if my videos resonate with you and you want to dive deeper on the recovery journey, make sure you check out our live meeting. Now, when it comes to emotional flashbacks, some emotional flashbacks have the ability to stop us from being our most authentic self. They keep us from doing things that at one time we loved to do. So as a result, we never feel like we're fully us again, even if our relationship with a narcissist changed, and it has to do with emotional flashbacks. And some emotional flashbacks have a different outcome. They have the ability to re-traumatize us. And so they keep us from feeling as if we can heal. They keep us feeling as if the trauma and the abuse is still alive again, even if the toxic person is gone. So that's really why I wanted to focus on how covert narcissists create these emotional flashbacks, because they are one of the things that keeps us stuck. That being said, the first thing we want to do is look at some behaviors that narcissists, especially covert narcissists, engage in to create the emotional flashbacks. One of the most common sayings that people after narcissistic abuse find themselves saying is, "I miss me." Because after the relationship ends, whether you leave home from a narcissistic family system or it's with a significant other, people just feel like they are not the same person. They don't do the same things that they used to do. The things that they were passionate about, they no longer engage in them. And here's why. So we know that narcissists, whether they're overt or covert, they do not like to see you happy. And the reason they don't like to see you happy is because it only awakens in them their lack of happiness. And rather than learn how to be happy, they prefer to kind of throw their unhappiness on you, make you feel unhappy, and in that way it kind of balances them out. They're like, oh, she's not happy, I'm the one that's happy. And that's how they regulate their lack within, right? But how this shows up is, let's say you're doing something that you love. And it can be painting, it can be dancing, it can be exercising, it can be reading a book, it can be doing anything that gives you enjoyment. If you're with a covert narcissist, they're not going to attack verbally what you do. See, this is the part that's hard because it's so hidden, it's so under the radar. They're not going to criticize you, they're not going to tell you you can't do that. But what they will do is make you feel bad for doing it in a covert way. So, for example, let's say you're really excited because you are a dancer and you had a recital and it went amazing, and you share it with them. A covert narcissist is not going to criticize you. They're going to be indifferent. And their lack of enthusiasm is going to cause you to feel pain, especially because you will notice that they are enthusiastic for other people's successes. And so what this does is it touches on a shame wound that probably exists there from childhood. Done over and over again, your body will then start associating dancing with shame or pain. What will happen is, little by little, you will stop doing the things that you love, whether it's dancing, whether it's reading, whether it's exercising. I can't tell you how many clients I've had that tell me, "Michele, I'm an amazing musician and I cannot touch a piano because every time I go to do that, my body freaks out because it is remembering what happened in the past." Thus, an emotional flashback. They create emotional flashbacks also with places or circumstances. So for example, let's say you go to a concert or a wedding regularly with your covert narcissistic family member or significant other. What will happen is a covert narcissist, again, they're not going to do anything that's obvious. It's often what they don't do that really causes the pain and what they do for others, right? So let's say it's a significant other relationship. You're all dolled up. You're looking your best for this concert or for this wedding, and they will say nothing. A covert narcissist doesn't want you to look good because that takes away from them. But they won't say it, obviously. They'll just act as if they don't notice you. What they're doing when they do that is they're touching on a wound of, I don't matter. If in childhood you were ignored, if you received that kind of treatment in childhood, you have a wound there. And the narcissist is really kind of poking their finger in that wound. And some of you might be like, oh, well, that's not that big of a deal. Now, I thought that at one time in my life with a certain covert narcissist. I was like, okay, well, maybe he's just not that kind of person that gives compliments. And, I'm not going to take that personal. And it's almost like he could detect I thought that. And at the very next event that we went to, he made sure to compliment and make sure that I saw him complimenting every single female there, and specific. So what happened was I realized very clearly, oh no, he does know how to notice things. He does know how to say them. He does know how to appreciate and express that to people. It was just not done with me, which again touches on that wound, I don't matter. And if you try to say something to the covert narcissist, they will say that you're jealous. Or they will say that they're not able to be themselves with you because you just get upset about every little thing. And so what happens is you're not trying to have a problem with them. You really don't. You're really not wanting to be jealous. But you're noticing something that's happening under the radar that they're denying is happening, right? And they're making you the problem for speaking up. So what do? We stifle. So the pain, the shame, the emotional abandonment, the rejection that we're feeling by their behavior comes up in our body. We don't have a conversation. We don't have any kind of repair with a narcissist because there's no normal conversations, right? So it gets stifled down. Done over and over, we can be out of the relationship, and all that we had to stifle down just to try to make the relationship somewhat peaceful comes up when we're in a situation that reminds our nervous system of it. And so now you're in the present. Fast forward. Let's say you're no longer around those toxic people. You go to a wedding or you go to a concert and you're excited because you're finally with people that love you and that are safe to be around. And yet your body feels shut down. You feel dissociated, you feel disconnected, or you're overloaded with the feelings that you had to suppress from the trauma from the past, the rejection, the abandonment, the shame, all comes up and overtakes you. So you get the idea. In the first example, that's an example of how emotional flashbacks stop us from being us. And in the second example, how they re-traumatize us and help us feel as if we are right back in the trauma with that toxic person, even though they're not even in our life anymore. So let's talk about what exactly is an emotional flashback. And I want to read this directly from the book, Complex PTSD from Surviving to Thriving. Highly recommend it. Anyone that has been through narcissistic abuse more than likely has complex PTSD. And when we start shifting into learning about CPTSD, we really start learning how to shift out of the abuse and the trauma. We really start being able to feel more like us again. We start learning how to get us back. And on that note, I want to remind you guys that in the School of Transformation, that's what we do. We meet together live and we do the inner work to work through CPTSD together. So we go over things like emotional flashbacks, harsh inner critic, the drama triangle, codependency. In April, we're doing somatic parts work. We have EFT sessions, breathwork sessions, and it's all designed to create a community of people that are on the same journey working towards healing after narcissistic abuse. So if this resonates with you, make sure you check out those live meetings. So let's get back to that definition. Again, this is taken from the book Complex PTSD From Surviving to Thriving by Pete Walker. And he describes in chapter 8, Managing Emotional Flashbacks, he says, emotional flashbacks are intensely disturbing regressions, also known as amygdala hijackings, to the overwhelming feeling state of your childhood abandonment. When you're stuck in a flashback, fear, shame, and/or depression can dominate your experience. These are some common experiences of being in an emotional flashback. You feel little, fragile, and helpless. Everything feels too hard. Life is too scary. Being seen feels excruciatingly vulnerable. Your battery seems to be dead, and in the worst flashbacks, an apocalypse feels like it will imminently be upon you. And when you're trapped in a flashback, you are reliving the worst emotional times of your childhood. So that's his definition. I think it's an amazing definition that really explains it. And now I want to kind of put it into context with what we've been talking about. You might be thinking, well, Michele, in the example you just gave us, if I had an emotional flashback years or decades after at a concert, that doesn't have to do with my childhood. That has to do with what happened when I was with the narcissist as an adult. And so we have to understand how trauma memories are stored. Trauma memories are stored in a part of our brain where it's not done in sequence. So for example, yes, if I'm at a concert and I'm going into a flashback because every concert I went to, I was made to feel so much shame or I was emotionally abandoned, I'm going to feel that emotional abandonment because of that concert that I had with my ex-narcissist. There's no time in the areas of our brain that hold trauma. And so if I'm feeling emotional abandonment, that part of my brain might just go back to when I was 3 years old and feeling that same emotion because it's still unhealed. And so it doesn't matter if I felt it at 3, at 10, at 25. To my nervous system, it's all the same. Now, when it comes to emotional flashbacks, something I learned the hard way is that they do not go away on their own. They were not created on their own, so they're not gonna just dissipate just because the narcissist is gone. Trust me, I tried. I waited. I was like, that person is gone. I'm allowed to be myself. I'm allowed to do this. I'm allowed to do that. And my body was like, oh no, that's not allowed. Because the embedded stories in our nervous system, they become the normal, the default. They also are more safe than change. Because even if emotional flashbacks make you unhappy, right, and take away from the quality of your life, which they do, your nervous system is like, well, honey, you're alive. Why rock the boat? So you might be thinking, okay, this makes sense. Yes, yes, and yes, this is happening in my life. What can I do about it? So let's move on to that. The first thing I would recommend is making a list of the current triggers in your life that are disrupting your happiness. It could be when somebody is late. It could be when somebody's upset. It could be when somebody talks over you. It doesn't matter what it is. Find the trigger, the external stimuli. Now, something we tend to do wrong on our recovery is we try to get other people to know our triggers and get them to stop triggering us. But what we're actually doing is avoiding what's in our body because trauma gets stuck in the body. And we're trying to get other people to not activate it, which can be helpful for a brief period of time. But the reality is that if it's in the body, it will find a way to come up. And so the most empowering thing we can do is to really start uncovering what's there. Even though emotional flashbacks are triggered from the present, from something happening in your present life, they really have less to do about the present and they're more about the past. And what I mean by that is, yes, something can upset you and irritate you, right, in the present. That doesn't mean that that's an emotional flashback. Normal emotions and emotional flashbacks are not the same thing. So for example, let's say somebody forgets to text me back and I get upset because I was waiting for that text and I needed to know some information. It's normal to feel upset about that. It's not normal to get flung into a shame spiral. I have so much emotion coming up that I wind up in a trauma response of either fight, where now I'm aggressive and I go off on the person for something really small, that's a sign that I'm coming from an emotional flashback. Maybe I flee and I ghost the person now because they did that to me. So now I'm never going to be around them again. So I don't feel that again. So it's really the degree of our response is going to help us to know if we're in an emotional flashback. And if the emotion we're feeling is not on par with the situation, that's an emotional flashback. But we still want to make a list of our present triggers because that's what we're conscious of, right? We need a starting place because everything else is in our subconscious. Step 2 is finding the meaning, because the meaning of whatever's happening in the moment that is causing the emotional flashback, that is outside of your conscious awareness. You're not choosing to get flung into an emotional flashback, but your nervous system has a meaning that is outside of your conscious awareness. In order to find the meaning, I'm going to give you an example of something that helped me and how understanding and uncovering the meaning, how it changed how I was able to show up. So there was a time in my life where I was in a relationship with somebody that loved to use the silent treatment. No surprise there, right? And at one time in my life, when that was done to me, it was like torture. Now, obviously, when somebody ignores you and treats you like the dead, you're going to feel hurt and pain. That is normal. But the amount of torture that I felt in my body at the time, I didn't realize why. But after learning about all of this, I realized that it was an emotional flashback. And so I had to ask myself, when this person does that and they give me the silent treatment, what am I making that mean about me that is causing all this pain? And meanings can hide. So what I mean by that is the meaning, the real meaning is always going to be an I am statement, and it's going to be something painful that you believe about yourself. But it can hide behind how you're seeing the other person. So at first, when I was trying to find the meaning, I was like, oh, that means, he doesn't love me. I am rejected. And I still had to dig deeper because that was still about him, right? He doesn't love me. And then I'm rejected. Well, the reality is in life, we can be rejected by different people. And obviously it's going to be more painful, somebody that we love or that we think loves us. But I could still feel like the degree of what I was going through by this silent treatment behavior, it felt life or death. So I had to dig deeper and I had to ask myself, well, if he rejects me, what does that mean about me? And I was in shock to realize that my nervous system, not my conscious self, my nervous system was making that mean that means I am unworthy. And then digging deeper, I was like, well, if I'm unworthy, what does that mean? Well, that means, why am I even alive? When I came face to face with the story in my nervous system, I was quite in shock because basically what was happening was the second I was going to be ignored by that person, the second I was going to receive the silent treatment, my nervous system so quickly was reaching the conclusion that I didn't even deserve to be alive. It went through the sequence of meanings so fast, and it was reaching that conclusion immediately. Now, by peeling it back and uncovering the meaning, it changed everything. Because now my conscious mind could actually see what was going on inside, why I was reacting the way I was reacting, and I was able to give my brain a choice. I was like, okay, well, when he or this person gives me the silent treatment, is that behavior evidence that I'm not even worthy to be alive? And my conscious self was like, no, like that's insane. And so it gave my brain the choice to let go of that old pattern that was not even in my conscious awareness. And what happened was, did the other person change? No. Did they get better? No. They probably got worse and more covert, but I began to change. And that's the beauty of really uncovering what is happening on an unconscious level by this psychological abuse. We start getting us back. So I hope this information helps you to start understanding where and why you might be stuck, how emotional flashbacks might be affecting you in your present day life, especially if you no longer have narcissistic relationships or people in your life that are like that. And I do want to let you know that obviously this is not 100% you do this and you're healed. This is what helps you to start uncovering your patterns. And with some emotional flashbacks, just having that cognitive understanding is enough. But with others, we do have to learn how to build our capacity, how to build our capacity to be with strong emotion that we have suppressed in the body. And that takes time. And that's what I specialize in the School of Transformation, really combining the mind and cognitive learning with somatic modalities that help your mind and body to heal and work together on this journey. So again, make sure you check out the school if these videos resonate with you and you want to dive deeper on your CPTSD recovery journey.